My name is John Fallon. I was a captain at the end of the war, but mostly a lieutenant during the fighting. And it was a long, long war, and it's hard to say which was the toughest fighting. Alsace or the Vosges, they were tough. But the ones you remember the most, I guess, are the ones in Anzio because it lasted so damn long. We were there month after month after month. And probably the happiest days when we thought we were getting out of there. And one day I was called to regimental headquarters, and Colonel Stanley said they had captured the German signals, and they were the very pistol signals that they could use in the front lines. And he said, "It works." He says, "I also have the German password in case you get caught." And so he says, "I'm going to send you out." He said, we're going to take everybody off their outpost so we won't get in trouble. So I went out with 2 men, and we went out pretty deep. And the first signal I sent off was supposed to be for the Germans that the Americans were starting to advance on them. And that was two very pistol, I wore the red and white or green, or I forget, remember that. The second one, a couple of minutes later, 5 minutes later, was supposed to be that the Germans were supposed to pull out of their front lines and move to the rear. And the third signal, 5 minutes later, a couple of I forget which color, was supposed to tell them that they're supposed to fire all their artillery on their former lines. This is very well thought out, except for one thing: the Germans paid no attention to it. So we got finished that, and then we thought we'd get back to our lines, and we were blasted by a tremendous blast of mortar and machine gun fire, and we had to crawl in our bellies all the way back, and back to the Mussolini Canal. And one of the young fellows there said, "We were shooting like hell. Some Germans sending signals out there," which was me, of course, and I ran into his lieutenant and blasted him. Anyway, a couple of days later, I was called again, and I said, the colonel says they've gone. They have gone. He said, "I want you to take your platoon. I want you to head south along Dog Leg Road where you've been working these last couple of months. And you know all the territory, and you're to head south, and we're trying to make contact with the 5th Army coming north because they broke through the casino line." And so I took off at 5 in the morning. He said, "Take your whole platoon," but I didn't trust him, so I left one squad back with our outpost and cover us up just in case. And so we went ahead, and we were doing pretty good. We got past the old German outpost line where we'd been. We were back further than we'd been in any patrol. We passed their minefields, and we thought we had it good until we got to what we call Red Road, and then several machine guns opened up on us, and my 2 scouts got hit, and so I sent one squad around to the left, and I went to the right. We thought we'd take them out, so we'd go around from the flanks. And I was doing pretty good. I got pretty close to the fellow shooting at us. I had a couple of men firing like heck at him. And then I saw something fly over my head, and I turned to look at it. I never got to see it. It was a potato masher. And I got hit. I remember almost nothing about it after that, and I was 4 months in the hospital. I lost 1 man killed in that one, and 5 wounded, plus me. But that was the last action I saw in Italy. It was going to get bad again in France, but at least Anzio was over for me. I went down to Naples, and I was in the hospital for 3 or 4 months. And about the 3rd or 4th month, the nurses started looking good. So they sent me back up to the front. But that's about it. That's why, actually, they were tough all over. I don't know. There was no such battle. It was at Bremerville or Remiremont or Docelles, they were all tough battles, but they only lasted a short time. But Anzio was so damn long, we couldn't get out of that place. That's why I remember that the most.
John, can you tell us how long the 36 spent in line as infantry?
Well, at Anzio, we were there about 50% of the time. Well, maybe more than that. Actually, we did almost no engineer work. All the time there were almost none. Whenever they sent us back for a rest after being in the front lines, we had new people coming in, we had to train them. And we didn't train them as engineers, we trained them as infantry because that's what they were going to be doing. I never mentioned a word about roads or bridges or anything like this. We had machine gun and scouting and patrolling and mortars and things like this. And we went back up to the front again. That's the way it worked. At one time we were on the front lines for 45 days without any relief. And I don't think there were very many infantry regiments ever did that much any time during the war. And we were there for a long, long time. What a great time. We were actually working with the British infantry divisions. We were attached at one time to the British 1st, the British 56th, and finally with the British 5th Infantry Division. And we had British tanks, we had British artillery, British forward observers with us, and they liked our food, except they had to have their tea every afternoon. They were good soldiers, I liked them. When we went to the right flank, though, Mussolini Canal, we relieved the 1st Special Service Force, which is the American-Canadian group. Fantastic soldiers. And our message when we went in there was that we want the Germans to think that they're still facing the 1st Special Service Force. So every night we'd paint our faces black and go out on a patrol. And every day we went out and patrol, day and night. My platoon was a reconnaissance patrol platoon, which was good in a way because we didn't have to go right up on the Mussolini Canal and in the Boxville. We went back to the canal and big old stone houses, which were pretty dilapidated, but they kept us out of the rain. But during the day, of course, I had to have we had 2 patrols, one on the left, one on the right, and every night. Sometimes I went out at night.
Okay, we're back.
When we left the Maleta River after 45 consecutive days in the line, things had changed at the Corps. General Truscott took over the command of the Corps, and he sent out a directive that every frontline company was to designate a patrol and reconnaissance platoon to take care of in front of the lines, and to leave the other platoons on the line to absorb the new people till they got blooded a little bit. And so in my luck, I got to be in the patrol and reconnaissance platoon when we went to the Mussolini Canal. And as I said, we went out every day and every night. We manned the outpost, and we at least 2 patrols a day, every day. And sometimes I took out a small patrol, reconnaissance patrol, just with 2 people, and I developed a couple of friends. 2 young riflemen went with me a lot. And 2 young 18-year-olds. One was named Rosenberg from New York, and the other one was named Williams, and we called him Chief because he was Indian ancestry. They were very good. They were really great riflemen. They knew how to handle a rifle. They were very good. And shortly before we broke out from the Anzio, we went out on a long patrol, and we went right down the center of the road. Figured the Germans think anybody would be stupid to do that, so they weren't looking at the center of the road. We went right down the middle. And we got to a certain point, and Williams pointed out to the left, and there's a German outpost with a couple of Germans sitting there chatting. And so I told them, I said, each one of you take one. and I'm going to go up ahead and see what's in front of us. I said, don't shoot until something happens up in front. And so I went on another 20 yards or so, and after my left, a little dugout, there's a German with a radio, and he saw me and he reached for his rifle, but I emptied my 45 Tommy gun clip in him, and the boys in the back started firing right away, and then we ran. We ran. We were way the heck deep in the German lines. And they started throwing mortars and machine guns and everything at us. And we got back all right. None of us got hurt. And reported in that I got a message from Colonel Stanley, said, why didn't I get the radio? And I told him, I said, I was running too damn fast. I couldn't pick it up. But those boys went out with me. They were ones with me when we went out on the TOT, time one target to shoot on one little town. We went out one night to aim the whole Corps artillery on one place that had been just lousy with Germans. The last couple of patrols that went out, I said, well, these Germans running around. And so they said, all right, you go out and we'll adjust the fire. And we went deep into the German outpost, and they started one round here, one round there, move it over this way. I said, you're on target. And they said, okay, stand by. And within a couple of minutes, the entire Corps artillery fired on them, all air bursts. And they just obliterated that town. And we were laying there, and you could see the German ambulances going back and forth. They must have cleaned up quite a few Germans with that one. But these memories are mostly Enzio, but not that it was any tougher than France, just that it lasted so damn long.
I have a question for you. I have a picture of you, which was taken on January 2nd, 1945. It was extremely cold, and the fighting was very tough. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Well, we replaced a regiment of the 25th Division. I don't remember which regiment it was. And we were told at that time that we did have to shorten the lines because most infantry had moved north to fight in the Ardennes and around there. So we were pretty short of people. So they told us we're going to have to pull back. That was near Bobbinshall. And our battalion pulled back, leaving just our company, and our company pulled back, just leaving my platoon. And they told me I was to leave the front lines at 3 o'clock, go back to the company, and then we're all going to pull out. And we fired a few rounds. I don't think we had a real opposition or anything like that. But I didn't wait for 3. I got a little head start. And I got back to the company CP at 3 o'clock, and Captain 5 says, he says, we weren't supposed to leave your port till 3. I said, well, we made good time. I said, well. So we left, and we had to burn a couple of trucks. The trucks were no longer mobile, and we had to be out of there in a very short time. So we burned a couple of trucks and left them there. Then we came to a bridge which I was supposed to blow. And I come over to this bridge, and right by on the enemy side, the far side, there's a tank destroyer with 3 guys or 4, whatever it was in there. I said, we're going to blow the bridge. And they said, they told us to stay here. I said, well, you can't. I said, I had no way of communicating. They had no way of communicating with headquarters. They're just 2 young, with a lieutenant there and a lieutenant here. And so we've got to do something. So I said, well, look, I'm going to blow the bridge. What are you going to do? He said, I'm going to stay here. I said, well, all right, well, buckle up, bundle up, I'm going to blow it. And they dug someplace under the thing, I guess, and I blew the bridge and took off. I have no idea what happened to them. They would refuse to go to the other side of the bridge. I don't know why, but they didn't. I hope they're all right anyway. Then we went back further, back to the Maginot Line. We didn't go into their dugouts. We made our own, because those things ran deep into the earth, you know, and we didn't go into them. We had no idea whether they'd been booby-trapped or not, so we didn't even try them. and the snow got worse. January 2nd, that picture you're talking about, it was a little cold, but it got so cold and the snow got so deep, and we were up to our backsides in snow. And we would replace one battalion this time, and they'd say, move over, take over another battalion, move over. These are replacing infantry battalions, or regiments sometimes. And we had to go from place to place, and we could barely move in the snow. And that was worse. We weren't getting too many occasional German patrols, but that's about it, you know, and occasional artillery, but not very much. The snow and the cold really was the worst. And we had to move from one position to another position. And we had to cross in front of a hill, an open hill, with all that snow on it. And we're in full view of the enemy. And we got to move fast. It's snow that's 3 feet deep, you know, it wasn't easy. And one of my fellows in there, young fellow, he said, come over. He said, Lieutenant, he says, you got to slow down a little. He said, if I got a daughter as old as you are. He was lying, but he did have a daughter. And I said, we're going to get our asses shot off if we stay here, you know. We went on a little further, and then my very, very best sergeant, prince of a man, he went haywire, and he started yelling and tried to shoot himself. And we got his gun off him and hauled him over. We got to the other side, found a Jeep and sent him back. And I told the doctor, I said, give him a couple days rest. And he came back in a couple of days. He was all right again. He was first-class soldier. All my sergeants were good. They were all, the ones that I picked anyway, they were all good Southern country boys. They knew how to use a rifle, they knew how to live outside. They were just as scared as anybody else, but they didn't show it, you know. And they knew how to lead men. And I never had to tell them how to do this or do that. I said, just say, do this, and he did it. Let them do it their way. They were wonderful soldiers. And they all were at least wounded once, a couple were killed. And I really appreciated them. One of them I knew lasted till after the war. We got to one of our reunions here about 10, 15 years ago. He died shortly after that. And these are memories that they're just etched into your brain.
John, speaking of your sergeants and very highly you are, that's a recurrent theme when I'm talking to any of the engineers from any of the regiments. All of them always speak very highly of their sergeants. Very highly.
Well, I had one sergeant from Louisiana. He was a Cajun. He was wounded twice before he was finally killed. Oh, that was a sad time. It was during Operation Nordwind, which was a terrible time after the Germans had tried to go in through the bulge, and then they hit us with Operation Nordwind. And we were fighting a German mountain division, and we were up in the mountains, and it was very tough. And I took a patrol every day to meet up with I Company because they were up higher on a mountain. We couldn't really connect because it was such terrible terrain. And I did it 4 days in a row, and it never got shot at. And so one day I said, Russ, you take it up. I said, it's nothing to it. Just go up and check in with the I Company and come on back. So he hadn't gone 15 minutes, and a couple of men came running back. He'd been killed, and a couple of his men wounded. That should have been me, you know, and I felt bad about that. I still feel bad about that. But he'd been wounded twice before that. He was wounded once with me when we were making that move out of Anzio, and these are terrible things when you have to do them. My other sergeants were all wounded at least once. They were good men, good men. They did everything that I told them. They never said why or where, and they did them better than I could. They made me look good. which was like for me, but they were great soldiers. All draftees, every one of them. I never had any one of my men ever balk or slow down or run back. First class soldiers, every one a draftee.
John, a few people have asked me, and were any of the line companies of the 36, did they ever see any of the concentration camps in or around Germany?
We went, yes, we saw two of them. When we were headed south, when the war was still going on, officially, although we were headed south with our lights on them, and with trucks, people with japes heading south, night and day, and just stopping a little once in a while and have something to eat or something, and we couldn't catch up to the Germans. We were going back the other way. And then all of a sudden it started, we would see a truck coming toward us with a truck full of Germans trying to surrender. And so we would send, going back, let some guy in the rear end catch it, let him get a picture in the paper or something. And we would pass, we're heading into Mittenwald, and just before you get into Mittenwald on the left, you never read about this little camp. It was a very small one. It was POW, whatever you called it, displaced person camp. And it had, I think, about 6 barracks, maybe about 50 in a barrack, something like that. It wasn't a big one. And these were work camps because these fellows were supposed to be working someplace, I don't know. But when we got there, the Germans had already pulled out. And some of these poor people, these poor emaciated ghosts, had already gotten out of the camp and they were laying dead in the street. They died right away as soon as they got out. And so we sent a word back to the battalion, and Dr. Kelly, Captain Kelly said, lock them in. And he says, I'm going to send all the vitamins, all the soup and everything I can find. But he said, they get out, they're all going to die. And so we did that. Then we pushed on further south. Was a day or then or 2 days into, I don't know. But we were in Dachau. Just, I don't know whether they were passing through or on a job, I have no idea. But the war was over. And we got down to Innsbruck. We got down to Innsbruck at the end of the war. We're still heading for the Brenner Pass, actually, and to meet the army coming up from Italy. And we didn't have to go that far. In Innsbruck, it was over. And they told us, well, hang up. We stayed in a magnificent little town called Seefeld in Austria. And we were there for several days, maybe a week, and the word came back and said, oh no, Austria's an ally. They were moved back into Germany, so we moved back to Mittenwald. And yeah, the only real place we saw them active with the displaced persons or whatever they were, the prisoners, that was in that little town, that little place just outside of Mittenwald. I have no idea what the name of it is. I've never read about it. And they were just as ghastly and inhuman as any of the others. In their striped uniforms, and maybe they weighed 110 pounds, and just skeletons. God bless them.
Do you remember where exactly you were and what you were doing when VE Day occurred?
Yes, I know exactly where it was. I know exactly where it was. We had some new men come in, and we were sitting on top of a mound outside of Mittenwald, and I had charts of Japanese uniforms and insignia, which we were supposed to teach them, and they weren't the least bit interested in it, I'll tell you. But then they said VE Day, it's all over, Frank, that's good, let's get out of here. But we thought we were going to go over to Japan next. So we weren't that elated, because we thought, well, at least we'll get a little time off or something, But that's where I was. I remember it very vividly, teaching them this is what a Japanese infantryman looks like, this is what a Japanese engineer looks like, and I remember it very well.
At the end of the war, how long did you stay after VE Day? And do you remember your trip home and what kind of reception you got?
Well, I had to stay for a little while. I was the only officer left in the company for a while. And one day they said, you're going to get we're going to get 50 replacements tomorrow, or 50, 60, something like this. I said, that's fine. And they say the next day you're going to get 60 more. Everybody's going. I'm all by myself. I had no other officers. And so one day the first 60 men come in, and I looked them all over, and I found that one of them was a first sergeant. I said, sit down. I said, find cooks, find truck drivers, find somebody. And the next day, this man was good. And he found them, and we got organized. And I got 2 new second lieutenants from OCS, very young kids, 19, maybe 18, 19. And they come in. And so then we had really very little to do, because the regiment had attached to it at that time a German engineer regiment, which had been captured, and we got an assignment. The Germans did it, so we didn't have to do anything really. And at their time, a captain he came from some armored engineer outfit. He came in to take over from me, and I was pretty, but I couldn't go home because I don't know why. There was some reason I couldn't go home. But they gave me a job. I was the director of railroad reconstruction for Southern Bavaria, and I had known nothing about railroads, engineering, or anything else. But I had an office in Augsburg, and I had one in Munich, in the Reichsbahn Directionamt, and I had to go to, I went to one of them, I think Tuesday morning, and then one of them Thursday morning, and all these old German engineers that come in with these magnificent drawings of new bridges and so forth, you know, and all I had to do was initial them. I had no idea what I was initialing, not the slightest idea. But it worked out fine. I was living in the castle, in the Stornberger Castle, which is where the old King Ludwig died. And then I got the word to go home. When we got home, I come home on the Sea Robin. Actually found out it was with a lot of other fellows I served with, even though we were with all different outfits at that time. And everybody stayed up all night on the last day so we could see the Statue of Liberty, barely, because it was about 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And we got in further, and we went up the Hudson River, and every ship in the harbor tooted a salute. And the people stood up on their apartments, waving sheets, so forth. And we felt real good. We went up all the way up to Camp Shanks, and it was all over.
Well, thank you, John. We appreciate your time.